Whenever we talk about the US military, everyone expects an extremely powerful and almost mythical army, one that is equipped with all the latest technologies, can neutralize any threat in advance, and has no flaws. But this is just the image we have, a perception shaped for us by Hollywood. JBZ. It's true that the US military is the most powerful army in the world, and it possesses cutting-edge technologies that many countries may not have access to or might not even dream of having. But technology doesn't always have the final say. Sometimes creativity can actually cause these very large armies to get stuck in situations where no one would have expected it. No one would ever imagine it or expect it. A good example is how American drones were grounded in Yemen by the Houthis. By the way, the Houthis themselves didn't have the capability to do this. It's because of Iranian weaponry that they're able to pull off such actions. Greetings to you all. I'm Ilyas Farokh here on Persian Render, and I'm back with another video for you. Shooting down an American drone is considered a huge honor for a country's military, an achievement they can boast about for years and use to show off to other countries. The first point is having the guts to actually shoot down an American drone. The second point is having the technology to be able to do it. And honestly, both of these are truly, truly admirable. For example, the Iranian military forces, many believe it was the work of the Islamic Republic's army, while others say it was the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. We don't really want to get into that debate here. What matters is that they managed to shoot down a US global hawk over the Persian Gulf at a time when it was said to have entered our national waters, and so we brought it down. That's probably what actually happened, and the Americans were unable to protest or carry out any retaliation. Of course, I don't know whether the damages for this drone were taken from our uncle's frozen funds or not, but that's not the topic of our discussion. So at the time when they managed to shoot down this drone, there was a lot of talk about it. Many videos were made, and it made a lot of noise in various media. People all over the world talked about it, and it was something really strange. At that time, I made a video about it and explained the whole story, how it happened, what the Americans thought, what the Iranian side said. And the more important point was that many people were saying we have systems that can intercept and target the F-35, and that it was with those very systems that we managed to shoot down the RQ-4 in the Persian Gulf. Of course, in all my research from reliable sources, I never found any claims that the RQ-4 is radar evading. It just has a low radar cross-section, but it is not stealthy. In fact, because of the type of missions it has to carry out, reconnaissance operations, these drones are not stealthy since they need to receive various signals. They even engage with radars in order to be able to identify them. Of course, the RQ-4 that the Islamic Republic managed to destroy was much more expensive than the MQ-9s that have been targeted in various places. But let's put all of that aside for now. We want to talk about Yemen. The Yemenis have managed to target and destroy a large number of American drones, a major embarrassment for the US military, especially when facing a force that we don't even consider a real army, just a group of barefoot people with the bare minimum of resources. With the most limited equipment available, they managed to shoot down advanced American drones. Even up to this point, what they are doing is, from their own perspective and from the perspective of groups opposed to the Americans, truly valuable. After all, it's no small feat. They've succeeded in countering cutting-edge technology with technology from many years ago. But how does this happen, and how many times has it occurred? The Americans themselves believe that since 2017, the Yemenis have intercepted more than 12 of their MQ-9 drones. The MQ-9 is one of the heavy multi-purpose drones of the US military, which since 2001 has carried out hundreds of various reconnaissance, surveillance, and offensive operations, including assassination missions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. This is the same drone that, with a single Hellfire missile, managed to assassinate General Qasem in Iraq and, of course, triggered those major events and the domino effect across the region. So it's really not an ordinary drone. Various figures are reported for the cost of building each one of these drones. Well, it depends on its options, its capabilities, or the technologies they load onto the drone and intend to use. The estimated cost that the US has for each of these MQ-9 drones is somewhere around $29 million to $50 million. So obviously it's not a cheap piece of equipment, and it incorporates multiple technologies, making it very important for the Americans as well. As I mentioned, the Americans have said that more than 12 of these drones have been intercepted, but the Yemenis claim that over the past few years, they've managed to destroy 18 American drones. We can't really trust either of these two sets of statistics very much. But for now, let's consider that the number is at least 12 and at most 18, as the Yemenis themselves claim. The Yemenis have repeatedly, for example, claimed that they've targeted or even sunk an American warship and things like that. That's why their statements are somewhat questionable in terms of credibility. But there's not really a significant difference between the Americans' figure of more than 12 and the Yemenis' claim of 18. For now, you can consider that number as not finalized, but if you take it as more than 12, let's say around 15, still that's a large number. Even these 15 are a significant figure for the Americans and amount to more than a full squadron. And if this many drones were given to any country, it could solve a lot of its own problems. If we consider the final cost of each of these drones to be $32 million and accept Ansarullah's claim, it means that so far the Yemenis have inflicted about $576 million in damages on the Americans. I searched a lot in various media to find out what tools the Houthis in Yemen might use to detect and track these drones, or even how it's possible for them to shoot these drones down at all. Let me tell you a few points first, then we'll get to the weapons. These drones usually fly at relatively lower altitudes, and as I explained to you, they are not stealthy. In fact, they are either searching for a target, conducting espionage, or carrying out reconnaissance in order to eliminate something or to gather certain information. That's why, since they attack at low speeds and are not stealthy, shooting them down is relatively easier. When I say relatively easier, I mean compared to fighter jets. Otherwise, shooting down drones is still a valuable achievement. I need to keep emphasizing this. I don't mean that it's a worthless or easy task, but it's relatively easier. For example, these drones can be targeted with anti-aircraft guns. It's difficult, but it's possible. Or for instance, they can be shot down with Russian SAM-2 missiles. They can be tracked and destroyed with man-portable missiles. But aside from those first few cases I mentioned, which are widely available like Russian missiles and anti-aircraft guns, man-portable missiles are usually not possessed by militia groups. I said usually, but of course there are exceptions. But among all this, there is another weapon that has made a lot of noise recently and could be called in a way the killer of these American drones. The Iranian 358 air defense missile. The Iranian 358 air defense missile, or as the Westerners call it, the SA-67. So far, it has been observed that various militia groups supported by the Islamic Republic are using the 358 air defense missile. Groups such as the Houthis, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Iraq's Hasht al-Shabi. For several years now, this has been in the public eye, and many people are talking about it. The Houthis in Yemen, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, call it Sakar, which means falcon. The way this loitering missile works, as its name suggests, is that it is launched, then circles within a limited area, and the operator monitors it through the camera and GPS. And whenever it finds its intended target and is able to attack it, it crashes into it, destroys the target, and is itself destroyed in the process. If it doesn't find the target, it keeps circling until it runs out of fuel, then it falls somewhere and probably doesn't explode. If it lands in an area controlled by friendly forces, they can go and retrieve the missile, refurbish it, and use it again. Well, we've heard before that the Americans have also made a similar type of missile, but I haven't heard of it being used operationally anywhere, or that they've actually used it. At least maybe my information isn't sufficient. And it can be said that this Iranian 358 missile is the first of its kind, meaning among loitering munitions. No one had seen anything like this before, and this seems to be an Iranian invention or innovation. It's not something super cool or bizarre. I'm not saying it's very advanced, no, but it's very creative and practical. I don't know if the idea for this 358 loitering missile came after seeing the Russian Lancet drone or not. It has nothing to do with that. They look very similar on the outside, but they're completely different. You can't say the Iranian version is an exact copy of that one because it's something different. But there are similarities. The fins are similar, and those fins aren't just for show. Each of them really has its own function, and they have a big impact on the missile's direction. But the point here is that this missile isn't very agile. That means with this air defense missile, you can't, for example, go and hit fighter jets. You can't go after a highly maneuverable target. You can only destroy targets that are slower or stationary. And of course, those targets can also destroy it more easily, but in the end, it can still damage its intended target because it has done this many times. You could say that several American MQ-9 drones have been taken out by this very Iranian loitering munition. Interestingly, the first time the Iranian 358 missile was used was when the Yemenis deployed it in the Saudi war, and one of them ended up intact in the hands of the Saudis. That is, this missile wasn't able to find its intended target and crashed. So the Saudis managed to recover one of them and then examine it to figure out what it was. Two more of these missiles were also seized by the Americans when the Iranians were trying to smuggle them to Yemen by boat. In other words, the Americans had become suspicious of the boat that was transporting these missiles to Yemen, ordered an inspection, and managed to find them. I've also heard several other times in different places that these missiles have been exposed, but in any case, some of them have ended up in the hands of the Yemenis, and I don't know whether they're being produced in Yemen now or not. Iranians themselves are still supplying it. But the point here is that the owner of the 358 missile brand is Iran, and everyone considers this missile to be Iranian. A lot of creativity has truly gone into it, but the point here is that none of the parts of this missile, the components used so it can, for example, intercept an American drone, are Iranian. In other words, the parts are not made in Iran. Iranians usually succeed in obtaining European technology by setting up front or shell companies. They acquire the necessary parts for the missiles. Then they assemble them here. A study that was conducted on one of these 358 missiles showed that most of its important parts belong to Western or American companies. That is, several Dutch and American companies, among others, were the manufacturers of these missile components, and all of them were parts that were not exclusively for military use. In other words, their export was permitted. That's why shell companies were able to circumvent the sanctions, or in whatever other ways they specialize in, like in the case of Mr. Mohammed Abedini that I mentioned to you before, and manage to get these parts to Iran by any means, then reassemble them for their own purposes and build a new missile using Western technology. But with creativity, but with Eastern creativity, and produce a new product. It is said that this missile has so far managed to destroy drones such as the MQ-9 or the Israeli Hermes 450 and Hermes 900. It is even said that this missile has been supplied to the Houthis and they have managed to shoot down one of Turkey's Akunca drones.
A drone that is capable of performing air defense tests. This innovation was done for the first time in Iran. Nowhere else had this been done before. For the first time, this was an Iranian innovation.
Are you referring to the 358 missile?
Well, that's one version of it. One version is the 358. There are many different models. Some of them, even many of you, are not aware of. Yes, these things have happened, and this path is ongoing.
The interesting point about this video is that you can destroy very expensive weapons, like American drones, with a series of much cheaper weapons, but with Iranian ingenuity. Now, Just imagine that maybe even the F-22 or F-35 might have such vulnerabilities, allowing Iranian weapons to succeed in bringing them down. After all, it's not impossible, it's just very difficult. But if the forces of the Islamic Republic manage to destroy one of the American F-35s or F-22s, that would truly be a historic achievement. But of course, that's only if they can actually pull it off. And the important point is that these weapons are built for the country. It doesn't matter which government is in power in Iran, whether it's a monarchy, the Islamic Republic, or any other system. The weapons that are made for Iran or by Iranian youth will remain for Iranians. Just like the fighter jets that the late king brought to this country stayed for Iranians and were used in the Iran-Iraq war. So I should also emphasize that our weapons are very important to us, and we are very, very grateful to those who make them. As long as the weapons they build and the capabilities they claim are real, and they don't just announce something in the media, but then later on the ground, we see that it doesn't work that way. I've mentioned both sides so that I won't be accused of supporting any particular side. I hope more of these kinds of weapons are produced so that we can better protect our country's borders and no foreign enemy can set foot in our country. Thank you for liking this video and supporting me with your likes. And I definitely read your comments about this air defense missile or the Yemenis shooting down American drones. I read all the comments and respond to them as much as I can. Until the next video, take care.